both for being here tonight. Tonight, the Board of Trustees is in its regularly scheduled monthly meeting to officially act on the items included on the posted agenda. The Board welcomes and appreciates comments and input from the community. Open forum is provided at each meeting to allow the public to address the Board. There will be 2 open forums tonight. Open forum number 1 is to hear requests regarding agenda items only. Open forum number 2 is to hear requests or make comments regarding non-agenda items and will be heard at the end of the meeting. Those addressing the Board are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes per meeting. The speaker should identify his or her name, group affiliation if any, and make a brief presentation with an identified solution if one is sought. Remarks should be addressed to the Board as a whole. Oral presentations may not include charges against any employee or board member by name. It is my responsibility to determine if a person addressing the Board has attempted to resolve a concern informally or through the district's complaint policies. If not, the speaker will be directed to follow the appropriate policy. The Board requests that all presentations be made in a courteous, respectful, and professional manner and asks that speakers monitor their own behavior. If you wish to speak during one of the open forums, please fill out one of the cards located on the table in the entry hall. Dr. Harrington, any comments?
Yes, I wanted to mention a couple of events. Our Trinity High School gymnastics team finished second in the state, so we were very proud of. And then we had a unique opportunity last week to meet the ambassador from Tonga, and the Tongan community put together a wonderful reception over at the Hurst-Euless Senior Center. And it was just a wonderful event to see that community interact and just the pride they had in greeting their ambassador and then getting to see some of the kids perform some dances. So it was a wonderful event.
Thank you, Dr. Harrington. All right, next we are going to read the Board Member Continuing Education Credit Report. I apologize, everyone. This is something that we have to do every year, and it'll just take a minute. Under State Board of Education rule, completing required continuing education each year of service is a basic obligation and expectation of any sitting board member. As board president, I'm required to announce the name of each member who has completed the required continuing education, has exceeded the required continuing education, and is deficient in meeting the required continuing education. There are 7 training areas for board members' continuing education: local district orientation, orientation to the Texas Education Code, 3, post-legislative update to the Texas Education Code, 4, team building, 5, additional continuing education, and 6, evaluating student academic performance and setting goals. 7 is identifying and reporting abuse, trafficking, and other maltreatment of children. To the extent applicable to each board member, I will announce the completion or deficiency as to required training. For members who still have time remaining to complete required training, I will announce those board members who have scheduled timely training and those who have not yet scheduled the training. At the conclusion of this announcement, I will announce any board members' training in excess to the continuing education requirements. So, first category, local or district orientation. The following first-year board members have completed the local district orientation training. Chris Brown. Orientation to the Training Education Code. The following first-year board members have completed orientation to the Texas Education Code training. Chris Brown. Post-legislative update to the Texas Education Code. The following board members have completed the post-legislative update to the Texas Education Code training. Chris Brown, Fred Campos, Andy Cargile, Julie Cole, Don Jordan-Wells, Matt Romero, and Rochelle Ross. Team building. The following board members have completed the annual team building training. Chris Brown, Fred Campos, Andy Cargile, Julie Cole, Don Jordan-Wells, Matt Romero, and Rochelle Ross. Additional continuing education. The following board members have completed the additional continuing education requirements. Chris Brown, Fred Campos, Andy Cargile, Julie Cole, Don Jordan-Wells, Matt Romero, Rochelle Ross. Evaluating student academic progress and setting goals. The following board members have completed the biannual training on evaluating student academic performance and setting goals. Chris Brown, Fred Campos, Andy Cargile, Julie Cole, Don Jordan-Wells, Matt Romero, and Rochelle Ross. Identifying and reporting abuse, trafficking, and other maltreatment of children. The following board members have completed the biannual training on identifying and reporting abuse and trafficking. Chris Brown, Fred Campos, Andy Cargile, Julie Cole, Don Jordan-Wells, Matt Romero, and Rochelle Ross. Exceeding required continuing education. Board member Chris Brown has exceeded the required amount of continuing education training by 3 additional hours. Board member Fred Campos has exceeded the required amount of continuing education training by 57.5 additional hours. Board Member Andy Cargile exceeded the required amount of continuing education training by 24 additional hours. Board Member Julie Cole exceeded the required amount of continuing education training by 32.5 additional hours. Board Member Don Jordan Wells exceeded the required amount of continuing education training by 21 additional hours. Board Member Matt Romero exceeded the required amount of continuing education training by 34.25 additional hours. Board Member Rochelle Ross exceeded the required amount of continuing education training by 34.5 additional hours. So thank you. That is that report. Any clarifications or questions asked by board members?
We do not.
Okay. All right, this time we'll review the board activity chart. I'll start with Mr. Cargile.
Well, this is the time of year that we get the opportunity to do a ton of stuff, and it works all the way through May. Just a couple of things, and I'll save some for you guys to fill in the blanks. I did have an opportunity to meet with our Texas House representative and go over our advocacy. You'll hear more about that from Dawn a little later in. I participated in community of schools, adopt a school reception, love the board ambassadors reception, employee banquet, and a few others.
I've done a lot. I've had another really great couple of weeks with so many different campuses and different events in the district. So first, I did attend National School Board Association in San Diego and brought home some very good nuggets on mental health that I can't wait to explore further. We had our big employee banquet on Friday night where we recognize teachers and retirees, and it was a fabulous, fabulous celebration. There was so much energy in the room. Went to the Community and Schools Luncheon, which I always love because we get to honor all of the social workers and all of the work that they do, and hear from a couple of students from around Tarrant County that tell their stories about how they were helped by social work. The Adopt a School reception, again, always a fun one because the adopters from the community get to come in and be honored for all that they do to give back to our campuses. At Keys High School, Mr. Adkins is here. I made an introduction a couple of months ago with someone at Six Stones and Mr. Adkins. Six Stones had an idea to bring momentum to Keys. So I made an introduction. Those two gentlemen made it fly, and I went to visit one of the Momentums last week at Keys High School, and it was neat because there's several kids in there that are really learning very, very good hands-on life skills. So, Teresa was there too. She works for Six Stones, and I'm just super excited about what's happening in that program at that school because I think those kids are really getting something extra, and I loved it. The PTA Reflections, that was fun for the PTA Council. We got to see all of the kids' council artwork, and it was just all set up in the room, and it was a lot of fun to see those kids honored for what they've done. Our board ambassadors had their graduation last week, and that was wonderful because now they're ambassadors that can go out into the community and spread the good news of HEBISD. The National Honor Technical Society or National Technical Honor Society, we went to that induction last week. That's always fun because those are the kids at the Buinger that are taking classes that are different than the Honor Society at the two high schools. So that's always fun. It's fun to listen every year how they tell us what it means, and I just love the whole ceremony of that one. And I've been on a lot of campuses, so thank you, teachers and principals, for the invitations. Please keep them coming. I went to Bedford Junior High to see their theatrical production of Dark Road. It was very difficult, kind of gut-wrenching, but those kids knocked it out of the park for being junior high kids. I left there just completely in awe of them. Went to Oakwood Terrace and did their pre-K classroom celebration. So sometimes we have kids that their parents just can't make it to their celebrations to look at their data folders, and I had the two most precious little pre-K kids, two little boys, and they were just fun, and they were all smiley and giggly and telling me everything that they've learned through the year. It was wonderful. I went back to Oakwood Terrace that night because they had their elementary production of Schoolhouse Rock. I laughed because I am the original generation of Schoolhouse Rock, and here these elementary kids are up there singing these songs, and they just come flooding back to you, and it was really fun to see those kids perform that. I visited Stonegate Elementary last week. They have an after-school girls club, leadership club, and that's probably one of the highlights over the last couple of weeks. That particular session was on nutrition and exercise and body image, and it was amazing. Miss Nordine talking to these girls very intentionally, very sweetly about what it means to grow up and become a teenager, and that no matter what they look like, they are valued and beautiful. And it was, of course, I cried the whole hour I was there. It was absolutely amazing. And Arbor Creek had their big art shows, so every single kid in the school, every single student had a piece of artwork displayed. And their gym looked like a gigantic museum. It was amazing. There was so many families there. And I think that was my favorite part, is how many families showed up to honor their kids at that art show. So I've been busy. If you're a principal or a teacher, please, my schedule's flexible. I love coming to visit. And if you extend the invitation, I'm going to do my best to be there, because this stuff is fun to me. So.
All right, thank you. Ms. Cole?
Well, a lot of things were already mentioned, so I will just name a few things that haven't been mentioned. First off, I don't want to forget about the wonderful welcome reception that we had for Dr. Joe Harrington, our new superintendent of schools. The culinary arts students did a fantastic job providing some really special food, and everybody, the house was full of people that wanted to have well wishes for Dr. Harrington. I also attended at the BCTEA a bistro lunch put on by the culinary arts students that was fabulous. Some of the best tomato bisque I've ever had. Then I also attended the lead HEB Year 1 cohort meeting, and it was, we had really great speakers. We had Mrs. Clark and Mr. Streeter, and they were fabulous. Then I also I went to Austin for the Legislative Advisory Council Meeting 1, where board members from across the state gather to talk about what are the main advocacy topics for public ed in the state. And it was a very fast 5-hour morning, and we worked really, really hard on that. And then, what else? I attended the Council of PTA meetings. It was the last meeting of the year. It was via Zoom. It was their end of year celebration. And to hear these really committed volunteers talk about the growth in all the PTAs, like literally every PTA in the school and in the district, and overall in the district, the numbers of additional PTA members is huge. So I'm really, really proud of the work that they've done. It was the final meeting for Crystal Sadler, who's been the president for a couple of years. She's done an excellent job. If you see her out in the world, tell her she's done an excellent job. And then the night of the board ambassador meeting that I didn't attend because I went to the North Texas Area Association of School Board meetings. I sit on that board, and we were in Mansfield at this really neat pre-K center that they have down there, and we had a really fabulous session that evening with some cool nuggets that I've brought back from that. So
I won't repeat, but I've attended some of the same events.
All right, I just wanted to say real fast, I don't know if Ms. Carr's here, but I was invited to be the speaker at the National Technical Honor Society induction, so I really appreciated that opportunity. And, you know, throughout the year, the board puts on various events, but obviously we're not the ones out there planning them and putting them all together. So I'd like to thank everybody who's here who had anything to do with either putting together the the Board Ambassadors Program for this year, so I think that was very successful, and we had a great final meeting. And also, of course, the employee banquet, which was fantastic this year. So thank you to everybody for putting that together for us. At this time, we will do open forum number 1. Thank you. All right, when you come to the front, please state your name. Your time will begin when you start speaking. You will have 3 minutes. Your time remaining will appear on the overhead screen. We respectfully ask that you conclude your remarks at the end of your time. So our only speaker for the open forum 1 is Cody Hancock. Right here at the microphone. And you're speaking on item athletic staffing update?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Hello, I am Cody Hancock. I've been teaching and coaching at Hurst Junior High for 7 years, and I would like to address the athletic staffing discussion. I have coached both high school basketball and track in my time at Hurst, so I'm familiar with a lot of the problems this proposal is trying to solve. A common question among junior high coaches is what exactly this plan will look like. I believe we have all heard that 2 boys coaches and 2 girls coaches will be at the high school from our campus, but we have not been told if it will be the same 2 coaches all year or if they're going to rotate through sports, which is more what we're used to. I have talked with at least 1 junior high coach from every campus, and we have all heard different things, many of them contradictory. This lack of communication has been troubling, to say the least. We also have not heard anything about how to get athletes up to the high schools. Will we be expected to get a bus every single day, which is honestly, it's a beating and time consuming to do that every single day? Or will the district provide transportation for the athletes? Many kids at Hurst Junior High in particular, they walk home after practice and will now be too far to safely do that. Do we have a plan to get them back home? These are just questions that we don't have answers to at the moment. Many parents can't leave work to pick up their kids, and it would be terrible for an athlete to be pulled out of a sport by their parents because they can't get a ride home. And another question we have is what will happen to athletes who don't make the sport they're trying out for? The junior highs will no longer have an off season for them to be in during 7th period athletics because those coaches will be up at the high schools. I think the biggest question for a lot of junior high coaches is the stipend. Will we be getting paid more for coaching high school? This is in particular if we are sent our 2 coaches up all year, they stay at the high school, only coach high school. If the answer is yes, quite a few issues will be bearable. If the answer is no, there will be a large amount of disgruntled employees at a time when morale is already at an all-time low. I was told by a former coach that former LD Bell head football coach Mark Smith taught at Bedford Junior High his first year of being the LD Bell head football coach and obviously was not paid a junior high stipend. So I believe a precedent has already been set to pay junior high teachers more if they are indeed going to be staying up at the high school the entire time. I first heard rumors of this proposed change at the bus barn after a basketball game in January. There has, in my opinion, been more than enough time for this to have already gone before the board and for a clear plan to be presented to coaches before the in-district transfer window closed. Right now, we still have more questions than answers, and this is obviously troubling for many of us coaches. If we are confused, it is because we've been kept in the dark, and we just really haven't had our voice heard up until this point in time. Also, another consideration, I'm sorry my time's up, is parents. Current 8th grade parents, obviously this is a big change for them, and we just want to make sure that we have a clear communication with them over the summer and get them ready.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For time.
All right. All right, we are down to consider approval of donations. I will accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the April 2022 donations as presented.
Second?
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the April 2022 donations as presented. Please vote. And that motion passes. So at this time, we will pass out certificates of appreciation to those who have made donations. And that will be read off by Board Vice President Julie Cole.
Okay, we're going to start with Board Member Dawn Jordan Wells. She has a certificate to go to, this is a donation from Compassion Kids to Keys High School, a $10,000 donation. This is going towards college scholarships. John Adkins is here to receive the certificate. Woo!
That's a good one.
Board Member Andy Cargile has a certificate. This is a donation to Meadow Creek Elementary School from Meadow Creek Elementary PTA. This is $1,170 going towards the admission to the Fort Worth Zoo for first and second grade. And Diantha Hall is here with Ann Rodriguez. I have one question. Can I go?
I know, that's what I was gonna say.
Well, this Thursday, we're going to Corvick Park, and we also have the pre-K leaps and bounds. It's field trips time.
How
again.
fun.
We're invited to join.
How fun. All right, Andy Cargile has another certificate from Meadow Creek, from the PTA for $7,115. This is going to the 4th grade field trip to the Capitol in Austin. The Meadow Creek PTA has been busy because they have another donation of $7,187. This is going towards dancing classrooms and transportation costs for the 2nd grade field trip to the Fort Worth Zoo.
I think half of that was money that I spent at their silent auction.
Okay, Board Member Chris Brown has a certificate from, for Trinity High School from, it's a donation from Mid-Cities Fine Arts Foundation of $14,500. And David Cook is here from the foundation, and Mike Harris. Board Member Fred Campos has a certificate for iTech Texas to PR, a donation to PR and marketing of $500 towards the Better Together Employee Appreciation Program. And Deanne Hollander is here to accept the certificate. Rochelle Ross has another $500 donation to PR and marketing from Chick-fil-A. Is there something I need to know about how this is said? Chick-fil-A a-doo-doo? A-doo-doo? Addo. I read this like earlier today and I'm like, what am I supposed to say? And I forgot to ask you. Leave it to Julie to mess it up. But I'm happy here to announce that the grand total of donations tonight is $40,972. This community supports HEBISD, and we're very, very grateful.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cole. That's a fantastic total, and thank you to all the folks who donated this evening. All right, let's have some fun. It's time for awards and recognitions. First, I'd like to say a quick thanks to our greeters this evening. You may have noticed 2 students in green blazers as you're entering tonight. These students are part of the HEBISD Student Ambassador Program, which is a select group of students chosen through an application and interview process to be the face of the district. They are trained to assist with public relations and communication services and are given the opportunity to positively promote HEBISD while developing leadership skills. Tonight we have Elise Pham and Elijah Constantino, who are both seniors at LD Bell. This past year, we have been using the opportunity to hear the voices of our district students by asking the ambassadors a question. So this month, the question will be from Ms. Ross.
So I love to read a lot. I love, love, love books. My question is, if you could have dinner with any author, alive or dead, who would it be and why?
Okay, so the author that I would like to have dinner with is Thich Nhat Hanh, and he had actually recently passed away. He is a Buddhist monk, but he is the author of the novel Old Path, White Clouds. And he had preached a philosophy of self-awareness, empathy, and selflessness. And in addition, he has taught me a lot of life lessons. For example, he's really changed my life. Instead of, first thing in the morning scrolling through social media, I've instead replaced that with a routine of mindful meditation.
Good girl.
Thank you. And he has taught me lessons such as the people we are today is not going to be the same people we are tomorrow, and the emotions that we have felt yesterday are not the same emotions that we feel today. So life is very fluid, and everyone has the opportunity to change, and so that's why he really stressed the significance of showing people kindness. And so if I had dinner with him, I would like to ask him how I could use my words to spread kindness, just as like how he did for me.
All right, so I don't know if I could beat that, but my name is Elijah Castanedo, and the author I would like to choose to eat with and eat some good food with is, what's his name? Sorry. His last name is Hosani. He's the author of the Thousand Splendid Suns and the Kite Runner. And I like learning about people's lives and how they go day by day, and I like learning about culture. And his books taught me a lot about Afghanistan and how the Middle East, it's hard to live there, not only for women, but only for men. And learning from those books, I just want to ask him, as he's a refugee himself, and he came from Afghanistan to America, and I want to learn on how life changed, because he left his whole identity in Afghanistan and to come here to live a better life. And those books that he made, it shows how lucky all of us are to have all the opportunities we have in the palm of our hands. And it's like, wow, like some people don't take that chance when you should, because we're very lucky to have those. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Can I have one for you?
Yes.
I just want to take a point of privilege on the ambassadors. These young folks are so impressive, but we have a group of 30 of these kids that are impressive. And I believe, Ms. Hollander, that the application process for next year is still open, yes? If you know a rising junior or senior that could benefit from this program, or that this district could benefit from having them in the program, please encourage them to apply, because it's really important work that they do.
That's a great point. Thank you. All right, now we are going to do the TMA Allstate Music Student Recognition.
Absolutely.
Chandler.
And before we start that, can I toss out something else about Elise? Elise has been awarded a national gold medal for her artwork at the Scholastic Art Competition. Yes. And we are proud to send her and her art teacher from LD Bell to New York, right, later in June to receive that award. So just another indication of greatness. And she's going to Harvard. So that's pretty awesome. Well, we are so delighted to be able to share with you about the students who were selected from HEBISD to be named to one of the TMEA Allstate music organizations. From thousands of kids who start that process every year to these that are represented here tonight, they represent the top 1 or 2% of musicians in the state of Texas. And we are very proud to recognize them and their directors this evening. So, if we may, hello, Dr. Harrington. How are you? I'm good. You going to help us out here? I am. Very good. From the LD Bell High School Band, Nicholas Meyer. And Nick, if you'll kind of stay over there when we get everybody done, we'll take a picture with everybody, okay? From LD Bell Choir, Nathaniel Taylor. Good job. Also from the LD Bell Choir, Mazan Mohammed. And from the Trinity High School Choir, Haley Hightower. Now, if I could ask all of their teachers to come up here with us all, Joanne Antonone from LD Bell Choir, Suzanne Dell from LD Bell Band, and Suzanne, Joanne, you'll have to be the choir representative for both. There you go. You are the choir person. Mr. Harris, come up here. Come on.
I can't be the choir.
No, but Board, I will say without a doubt, with these young people in place, I feel a whole lot better about the future. Congratulations, everybody.
Thank you. And of course, the board would like to extend its great congratulations to all of you. Being a band dad myself, I know we have a lot of people who have kids who have been through the music programs of both Bell and Trinity, and to be recognized as an All-Stater in Texas, that is a huge achievement.
Sure is.
There are so many students, and it is so competitive that you really have to be the best of the best to get that distinction. So congratulations. So at this time, we will do our LD Bell School senior class presentations.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rowan Brock. I am the senior class president at LD Bell High School. On behalf of LD Bell High School and the senior class of 2022, I'd like to extend these invitations to upcoming senior events.
Yay, it's our favorite time of year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your unconditional support through the years. Your actions are greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
And now for
Good
Trinity.
afternoon. My name is Jimena Rodriguez, and I'm the Trinity Senior Class President. Today with me, I have my fellow officers, Ella Kiernan, our Vice President, Shima Mohammed, our Secretary, Chloe Jones, our Treasurer, and Paris Sithvong, our Historian, and we would like to formally invite you all to our senior events.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Thank you so much, seniors and senior class presidents. We appreciate you coming this evening and giving us our invitations. We look forward to attending as much as we can. All right. This time we're going to adjourn into closed session. Pursuant to Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, the board will adjourn into closed session for purposes of Section 551.071 to 551.074. We are in closed session. right, the board is back in open session. Without objection from the board, I'm going to move item 8.02 down to following our second closed session. Any objection? All right, so at this time, we'll move into our human resources action items. Item 9.01, consider approval of coordinator of elementary DAEP and truancy. I will accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the appointment of Valen Little-Tut as the coordinator of elementary DAEP and truancy.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve Valen Little-Tut as coordinator of elementary DAP and truancy as submitted. Please vote.
Excited. It's okay.
And that
There
is
you go.
approved.
Now.
All right, Valen, at these meetings, we like to give you an opportunity to stand up and invite you to introduce anyone who came along with you.
Well, you heard them already. My parents, my mom and my dad, my aunt and my uncle, and my husband, my niece, and my two children. One is a kindergartner at Lakewood, and my other one will hopefully be there in a couple of years. So,
Yay.
every big moment, and they're doing good. So.
Yay.
All right, congratulations. All right, 9.02, consider approval of elementary principal. I will accept the motion.
I move that the board approves the appointment of Stephanie Ann Coulter as the principal of Trinity Lakes Elementary School.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the appointment of Stephanie Ann Coulter as Trinity Lakes Elementary School principal as submitted. Please vote. And that motion is approved.
I'm not going to forget my husband because I forgot him when I was appointed as an AD. Then I have my sister and brother-in-law and their kids, my nieces and nephews, my daughter Kennedy, sister Sarah, and my parents. You said you wanted. My school family, my mentor Debbie, parent, principal, friends, my everything work here. Thank you very much. I'm very honored.
All right, 9.03, consider approval of secondary assistant principal.
I move that the board appoint Alton Jackson Jr. as the assistant principal at Trinity High School.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve Alton Jackson Jr. as Trinity High School assistant principal as submitted. Please vote. That motion passes.
Yeah. We do that for extra effect.
I want to introduce my wife, Jissy. We're married 20 years. We have 2 kids. One's in college and one's a senior, so he's at home somewhere. I'm really excited. I'm very excited to be here today. Once again, thank you, Mr. Harris, for letting me join this rockstar team at Trinity. I can't wait to get started. And once again, thank you guys on the board. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson, and welcome to HEB.
Thank you.
All right. We are on the consent agenda. Does any board member have any item they would like to remove from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion.
I move the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the consent agenda as presented. Please vote.
Not showing what?
All right. So we should do a hand vote? All right, if, all in favor? All opposed? All right, we are ready for our first report. Disbursements for the month of March 2022. Are there any questions on disbursements? Report on resignations and retirements. Any questions on this report? Graduation update, Mr. Streeter.
All right, good evening. It's that time of year again, if you can believe it. And more importantly, we're going to have a real, normal, traditional, wonderful graduation at Dickies Arena. It's been a long time coming. I know our kids are excited, our staff is excited, and honestly, Dickies Arena is really ready to host us. So here we go. Key's graduation will be at Cross City Church, as usual, 7 p.m., and very excited there. You all remember last year what a great crowd we had. LD Bell will graduate first this year at 2 p.m. at Dickies, followed by Trinity High School at 6 p.m. So general parking right now is at $20. Parents and students will be parking in the yellow lots and parking garage, and then the staff parking will be lot B in that garage. And we'll be sending out all this information via social media, etc. Wonderful seating. It's open seating, no tickets required, so families can come, and there's no limit on how many. We have a capacity of easily 12,000 people, so we should be able to accommodate all of our families, friends, and guests. And then just a quick review, bag policy, just wanted to put that in there, and that too will be on social media and shared with all of our parents and families. And then lastly, we'll be providing transportation. There will be a light dinner at Dickies for everyone, and masks are not required, and seating at Dickies and Cross City are open to all, no tickets necessary. May I answer any questions?
Is there a graduation before Bell?
I'm sorry? No, sir. I believe the arena is ours that day. Yeah, very good question. I'll confirm that, but I believe it's ours for that day. Any additional questions I can answer?
Any more questions from the board?
I'm excited to be there and not Texas Motor Speed. I was grateful for the opportunity for my son to graduate from there, but Dickies Arena.
Well, and it's going to be nice, air-conditioned and inside, and it's a beautiful facility, and it should really represent our kids well. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Streeter. Next, we have district benchmark assessment. Dr. Norgard.
All right, it may already be graduation season, but it's still DBA season too. So we've got some reading data for you this evening. As with all my reports, these are towards quality indicators in our strategic plan related to meets and master's grade level. Some context before we look at reading for the evening. Because our 3rd through 8th grade STAR exams are shifting to a combined reading writing format as opposed to having the separate writing in 4th and 7th, this year, our DBA2 also included some revising and editing field items so that they get used to seeing those kinds of things mixed in with the reading. Those weren't part of the total score, but there could be a potential impact on the overall performance as it made the test a little bit longer, so impacted their stamina. You will see when we get to the 5th grade that we did give it much later than we usually have. That's aligned with the state testing calendar. There's still about the same amount of time between the DBA and where the STAR will fall. And as we've been talking through this year for our trend data, we use the traditional student score since that was more closely aligned to our usual pattern of using DBA to predict STAR performance. So for grade 3, it is given in English and Spanish. You can see the number of testers in both, but it's that combined performance that will carry forward into our year-to-year trend. So there, with the current year at the bottom, you can see green arrows. We are rebounding from our performance last year. We are not yet back to pre-pandemic standards in all the areas, but we are at meets and very close at approaches and masters. These are our performance objective targets based on last year's third grade reading performance, a different group of students, but that's how you set our goals. And so you can see there we are very close or meeting and exceeding. So you can see on the far right, this is the several years of how we've performed from DBA to STAR. Last year we had that DBA 1.5 with the technical glitch. That's why it's kind of grayed out. It didn't follow the normal pattern. But you can see that we are very close to those kinds of gains. And if we get the gains like we've gotten in what would have been a typical year, we will definitely exceed those goals. There's no cohort history since third grade is the first time they're taking STAR. So as we look at fourth grade, fewer students testing in Spanish as we're starting to move towards our exit model, so only a few testing in Spanish. We did improve over last year's fourth grade performance in all the areas and getting close to those pre-pandemic norms if you look back up a few years. And right there close to our targets. So when we see that in the graph, it's just the visual of what was in those numbers before of how close, what kind of growth we need to get between this DBA and STAR. So here is a little bit of cohort performance history. I boxed separately that DBA 1.5 as we discussed because it just didn't follow the same normal trend data. So you can see the growth that this cohort of students have had from DBA 1 to DBA 2 this year and where they were performing when they were in third grade. So you can see the growth that we need. For fifth grade, again, very few students that are actually testing in Spanish. These tend to be newcomers. Here's where you see the difference in the date. I just pointed that out. So it is much later than we've typically given, but the STAR is much later than we've typically given because there is no SSI. We see nice rebounds, double digits at approaches and large at masters as well. So exceeding where we were pre-pandemic for masters. Still have some growth to do at approaches and meets. But when you look at our targets, we are nicely aligned with our targets, and we can see the little bit of step that we need to make at a minimum and how much more we expect to gain between DBA 2 and STAR. More history, the more years they're with us, the more history we have on them, so we can see the kind of growth that these students have shown us over the years. And in fact, didn't even have that. Typically, when we come in a new grade, we kind of dip back down as they're being assessed at a new grade level standard. In this group, when you see where they left fourth grade and entered fifth grade, actually holding their own or picking up some speed and momentum there. Sixth grade, everyone tests in English. We do not have the bilingual testing option. So that's what we're going to follow in the trend data. We do see improvements in all, and we are looking at our pre-pandemic performance at sixth grade reading. But where we're not is to the targets yet. So we had been doing some gaining of ground in previous years, but we've got a little bit further to go at this approaches level with sixth grade. So what are we doing with our students between DBA 2 and STAR to make sure that we get all of our students where they need to be in the performance we've expected and set in our targets? So that's where you can see this is the biggest step in the purple approaches of all the data we've looked at tonight. This trend data, though, for this group of sixth graders, every year they have grown across all of their testing. So we do expect this group of students, when we give them the right intervention and appropriate tasks, that they are going to dig in and show us what they can accomplish in that time between their DBA 2 and STAR. So what we've been doing about this, we're having discussions in the ELA classroom designed to specifically target academic and genre-specific vocabulary. That's where our data is telling us we need to reinforce. Continuing with short constructed responses that have added, this is a type of writing that really helps them interact with the passage instead of just, I'm gonna write about this thing that sounds interesting, but really digging into the passage. So it's gonna strengthen both the reading and the writing. And since we have map data this year as well, that would help further refine those intervention groups. It's another data point for teachers as they're making those intervention groups. They can say, wow, you were struggling on map at this point at mid-year, but now you've gained improvement. Let's maintain that, but here's an area where you've been low in both. So it really helps refine for our teachers. We have included some practice activities in the curriculum to help students engage with the online dictionary tool. This has been a little bit different in different platforms, and in Cambium this year, students have to know the root of the word. They can't just start typing a word that they've seen. If it has a prefix, recycle, it's not going to find. They need to know cycle and get. So that's a little bit of a difference in learning how to use our vocabulary and break down words to look with the online dictionary or paper dictionaries as well. So both are available. And we've talked in some of our secondary reading presentations before about the app that the secondary ELA department has made for DBA review. We have that for 6th grade as well. Questions about our reading performance?
Any questions about this report?
I don't have any questions. I just want to say that it's pretty obvious to me that the teachers and interventionists are working very, very hard. And I am hoping that some of the conversations as they're moving from this DBA to the next step is that they're doing great work, and it shows, and that, they just need to get themselves to the finish line. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it every time, and I'm just really, really proud of our people.
Yeah, they are keeping, pedal to the metal and, not letting up. We're keeping that steam to the end. Thank you for that.
Yeah, we know every point is hard-earned, so. All right, next is athletic staffing update. Mr. Fielder?
Good evening. Thank you very much. All righty. With the staffing update, we're going to give you an idea of where we are as far as our high school coaches relative to other school districts. And then we're going to put a proposal on the table on how we can balance that up. Because you'll see, the first thing you'll see is our high school staffing is well behind, deficient relative to the other districts around us. But we have a proposal that would equalize that, and let's just go through it, and hopefully this will clear it up. So athletic staffing update. And we're focused on goal 4.2, focus on the whole child. All righty, there's three different screens, so the graphics are big enough for you to see. So let's just take them one at a time. There are 12 school districts that we surveyed. And the very top line is our HEB, how many coaches we have per sport at the high school. Now keep in mind, at our high school, we have 10, 11, 12. These other schools have 9, 10, 11, 12. So it's kind of it's not an apples to apples comparison yet. Now, when we get later into this presentation, it will be. Yes, they do. Blue is Bell and red is Trinity, and then black is both. It just so happens that at Bell, they have one more baseball coach than Trinity does, and with football, Trinity has one more football coach than Bell does. So that's why those stand out like that. So you can see then that the number of coaches we have versus the survey average, and again, the survey average is those 12 school districts, adding all those numbers up, dividing by 12, and let's take baseball. We're at 4 at Bell, 3 at Trinity, and the survey average over those 12 school districts is 4.5. And then you can just look across there. You can see boys and girls basketball, we're extremely deficient, slightly deficient in cross country.
All the programs that are included are all 6A programs?
Let's see, that's not necessarily the case. Most are. Northwest has some 5As.
Has some 5As.
Grapevine, Colleyville, both of theirs are 5As. Birdville has one 5A, 2 6, 1 6A, 2 5As. Okay, so that's, again, that's baseball, basketball, cross country, and football.
So Mike, on these numbers, are these counting head coach and assistants?
Yes, sir.
Are they counting volunteers?
No.
Okay.
No, just paid coaches.
For example, Fort Worth ISD baseball 5, is that every baseball team in Fort Worth ISD has 5 coaches?
Yes, sir.
We sent out the Google survey, and they filled it out and sent it back, and that was the question. Basically, how many coaches are you paying per sport? And that's the response.
But it's per sport, per school, right?
Per sport, per school, yes. Golf, Barry, we're behind there on golf. Gymnastics, powerlifting, boys and girls soccer. Girls soccer, we have 2 high school girls soccer coaches because we also currently we have girls soccer at the junior highs. We do not have boys soccer at the junior highs. Boys soccer goes to the high school. That's why that number is kind of strange. But again, either way, we're deficient. We're slightly behind the average. And now,
The boys, sorry to interrupt, but the boys soccer at schools where there's 9 through 12, they have soccer for 9th grade.
correct.
But we don't. We have Liga, but that's separate.
Correct. Everyone here has all these sports in their 9 through 12 campus.
Interesting.
Exception might be Carroll. They have a high school and a senior high school, but they end up on whichever campus that sport is on and that level is on. But for us, we have our girls soccer, and this has been this way for 25 years. Our girls soccer is at the junior high, 9th grade we're talking about, and our boys soccer is at the high school. So they're not
Right.
apples to apples.
Right.
All right. Nope.
Do we know if any of these schools have more teams at a particular school? Or
We're
greater
pretty
number of
much
participants?
we're pretty much in the norm as far as a varsity or a JV 1 and 2. All of these are going to have a freshman A and most likely a freshman B. Our freshmen are not counted in this.
Right.
But yeah, it's pretty standard. Now, there are exceptions, but most are going to have their varsity, their JV. Like, let's just take football. Varsity, JV 1, JV 2, freshman A, freshman B. That's pretty routine across that. Fort Worth ISD, probably not, but the rest of them, yes. Baseball, some baseball, Carroll baseball, Capel baseball, they're going to have a lot more teams than others. They probably have 3 JVs, or excuse me, a varsity, 2 JVs, 2 freshmen, something like that. So some schools are just heavy in some sports and maybe not in others. All righty, this is our configuration with head coaches and first assistants. And again, just giving you an idea of how our the school districts around us do it. Typically, the head coach is a 1-sport coach, and the first assistant is a 1-sport coach. Where you see the red and the green, those are areas that we're not that, but we would like to. Our goal is to get there. That's not going to happen next year or maybe even the year after, but down the road, looking down the road, if we could move that direction, then we would be like those around us. For instance, at Bell, we have a head baseball coach that's baseball only, and at Trinity we have a head baseball coach that's also a varsity secondary coach. Now, thank you to HR and Cicely and her staff. The green designates that we've moved away from that in the last couple of weeks. So going into next year, the head baseball coach at Trinity will be baseball only, and the first assistant at Bell will be baseball only. And then looking down the road again, hopefully at some point the first assistant at Trinity will be a baseball only. And like I say, all the red that you see, those are typically 1-sport coaches at our surrounding districts. And sometimes, as you see, one of our high schools does it one way and one does it the other. The track connection, there's obviously a natural relationship between cross country and track, and you would like, again, down the road, these coaches do a great job let's say, the basketball coaches at Trinity that also do cross-country. They do a great job. But looking down the road, it would be nice if there was a connection between track and cross-country, for instance. So anyway, I just wanted you to see that and to see what we look like as far as our head coaches and our first assistants.
So the number right behind their name, let's go down to softball.
Okay.
If we look at Kirk,
Yes.
2, that means he's 2 sports?
Yes, that means
Okay.
he's head softball, and he's 2 sports. His second sport is football, and our goal would be to get him to, or that position, to be a 1-sport coach. And if you look over to the left of that, at LD Bell, the head softball coach is a 1-sport coach. But at Trinity, the head softball coach is also the varsity line coach. for the
Is there a
football team.
possibility that some of them want 2 sports?
There is that possibility. And it's obviously, they get an extra stipend
Yeah.
for that. So that's why we're not in a hurry to do this, because, they're putting food on their table and they're counting on it and all that.
Right.
But I just want you to know that school districts around us typically have head coaches 1 sport, first assistants 1 sport, and some of ours, we do that, and exactly that, and some we don't. And the 2 high schools certainly don't look alike, which is fine. Our 2 high schools don't need to be cloned. We really don't do that in anything. But I just wanted to let you know what the folks around us are doing.
Yep, good.
All righty. Our current freshman sport configuration. The sports on the left, we're talking about 9th grade. We're talking about freshman athletes, freshman teams here. The sports on the left: baseball, cross-country, golf, gymnastics, powerlifting, soccer, boys soccer, softball, swimming, tennis, and wrestling. All of the kids involved in any of those sports, or all of those sports, they go to the high school, or they go to TCC in case of swimming, but they go to the high school. They're on the high school team on all of those sports. The sports on the right, and again, we're talking only about freshmen right now, 9th graders. The sports on the right: boys basketball, girls basketball, football, girls soccer, and volleyball. Those sports are still at the junior high. And that's where we are very different than everyone else. And obviously there are pros and cons there. But we are asking in 7th grade and in 8th grade, everyone has middle schools or teams that are smaller, and these schools that are middle schools after 8th grade typically go and become bigger schools: 9th grade center, high school, and all their kids go together. And in our case, we have another year where they're still small, and obviously that's a competitive disadvantage.
Yep.
But anyway, we'll move on to. So here is the proposal I have for you tonight. We currently have, on the boys' side and the girls' side, at all 5 junior highs, we have 6 coaches, 6 athletic coaches. I'm not talking right now about gymnastics or tennis. I'm talking, or swim or anything like that 9th graders may participate in. I'm talking about the coaches that coach volleyball, basketball, track, cross-country, soccer on the girls' side, and football, basketball, track, cross-country on the boys' side.
Got it.
Okay, we have 6 athletic coaches. The proposal is, in the morning, typically 7th grade athletics is the first period of the day. And during season, a team will begin practicing early in the morning, 7:30, something like that, and during their season, let's say basketball season, they start practicing at 7:30, they work through first period. That's 7th grade. Okay, all 6 of our coaches in this proposal will continue to do just that. They'll work. Not all of them necessarily get there early and work with the kids, but the coaches of that sport do. But all 6 coaches would continue to work with the 7th graders in the morning. Now, in the afternoon, and just because it's easy, I'm gonna tell you about football, even though this applies to all of them. But in football, we have 6 coaches, and in the last period of the day, which is 7th period, and 3 of them go with 8th grade and 3 of them go with 9th grade. Okay. And again, we're deficient there because there's probably not another school that I can identify that has 3 coaches coaching an entire freshman group or even an entire 8th grade group. So anyway, we have all 6 coaches working the 7th grade, and then currently we have 3 with the 8th grade, 3 with the 9th grade. In this proposal, we would keep 4 coaches from that campus working with the 8th grade. Now that might be for girls, it might be 2 with volleyball, 2 with off-season. We're talking about the last period of the day, 7th period. In basketball, same thing. You've got some off-season kids that aren't in basketball, and then you've got basketball kids that would have 2 coaches for the 8th grade. So there are 4 coaches working with the 8th grade. Now, we said there are 6 coaches there, so we're taking, since we have 6, 4 are staying with the 8th grade, 2 are going to the high school in this proposal. And when you take the 2, let's just take the Trinity side. You've got 2 from Harwood, 2 from Euless, and then Central splits geographically. So we've got 1 going to the east side, 1 going to the west side. So you've got the 2 at Euless, the 2 at Harwood, and the 1 at Central. And those 5 coaches are now going with freshman kids to the high school. And that's happening on both sides of the district. It's you cut it down the middle. You've got 5 coaches, 5 boys coaches, 5 girls coaches going to work with Trinity freshmen, 5 girls coaches, 5 boys coaches going to work with the Bell freshmen. Okay, all righty. We say, well, what do we do with those coaches? How do we allocate them? Let's take the boys in the bottom left. The boys sports. We've got football, boys basketball, boys soccer, baseball, and track. Fall, winter, spring. So in the fall, 4 of those coaches would be going to work with freshman football and 1 with basketball. Basketball obviously is the next sport, right? After football comes basketball, so we allocate 1 to basketball. In the winter, 2 remain in football. That's your biggest number of kids. And 2, it's in season now for boys basketball, so 2 are in boys basketball, 2 of those 5 coaches. And then 1 goes to track, which is coming up after Christmas. And then in the spring, 2 remain in football, 1 in boys basketball, and then 2 in track because now it's track season. Now, the reason boys soccer and baseball don't have numbers out there is because we've already, years ago, we accounted for them. And I don't want to really bog you down, but basically we had more teams than we had coaches. So we had 3 teams, and we had 2 coaches, 2 paid coaches, and we said, well, we have to have at least as many coaches as we have teams. So we started, again, thank you to HR, we started giving coaches that could. I'll give you an example. Philip Gibson, he is a teacher at Bedford Junior High, and he gets a baseball stipend only, and he goes up in the afternoons and he coaches baseball. So he's another paid coach for baseball. Scotty Smith, for years, was a Trinity baseball guy. He's still is an elementary PE teacher. And after he got through with his duties at the elementary school, he got in the car, went over to Trinity, and he got the baseball stipend. So that's why those asterisks are there. We don't need to allocate these coaches to those sports because we've already accounted for them. Moving on to girls, fall, winter, spring. So volleyball is in season during the fall, and then a coach will remain with them in the winter and the spring. Girls basketball, we have 2 with them in the winter, and then you can see girls soccer, softball, and then track. So basically, we have on all 6 of those columns, they're all the 5 coaches that we talked about at the top that are being allocated from the junior high, 2 per junior high, to go to the high school to work with freshmen. All right, so with that in mind, this is what our in-season coaches would look like now. We have, you see, 3 columns plus an equals and a final number out there. So to walk you through the top line, baseball, we have 3 coaches that are dual contract coaches at Bell, and again, 2 at Trinity. But let's talk about Bell for a second. 3 dual contract coaches, 1 stipend only coach, and that's Philip Gibson that comes from Bedford Junior High. So they've got 4. Trinity has 2 dual contract coaches. They both happen to be football coaches as well. 1 stipend only coach, and then no freshman coaches equal 3. Going to boys basketball. The red is the freshman coaches that we talked about on that page, okay? All righty, so boys basketball and girls basketball. In season, they will now have their 2 dual contract coaches, and then they'll get the 2 freshman coaches, so now they would be at 4 for the boys and for the girls. And you can see football would go from 10 to 14 on the Bell side, and 11 to 15, 11 to 15 on the Trinity side. And work down to girls soccer, we would go from 2 to 3. Softball would go to from 2 to 3. Track would be at 8, volleyball at 4. Okay, here's what that does for us on our comparison. Again, the first line at the top is where we are right now. With the proposal that I've just explained, that's the second or the middle number that says proposed in the light green. And then right below that, you can see the survey average. So by implementing this proposal, we would close the gap. We don't completely close the gap, but we certainly tighten the gap. And you can see that we're in the game, we're in the ballpark on most of the sports, and there are still a few that we're deficient in. Yes, that's, so again, this would require, I showed you on an earlier slide that this is what we currently do. The proposal would require that the 5 sports on the right begin competing at the high school. They get on buses and they go, which we already do. The sports on the left, they already get on the bus. All the kids that are involved in those sports do get on the bus, and they go to the high school or the swimming pool, and they compete at the high school level. So much of this we've done for years, but to take all the kids, and I certainly need to say this. I've been here 17 years, and this idea comes up from time to time. And for different reasons, people have been for it or against it over the years. I can tell you that today we have 7 principals, 7 secondary principals for it. We have 12 coordinators for it. And the high school head coaches, I would venture to say 100% support. I sense that not every junior high coach is for that, but the plan, and kudos to Barry and Sandy, we've been working very hard at what this will look like, because we're talking about people, right? We're going to impact people, coaches, kids, and we're working on formulas on how we make this equitable and who we bring up, and for the most part, we'll be able to bring up let me get back to the screen. Let's go with volleyball. In the fall, there's 2 coaches. In the winter, there's 1. In the spring, there's 1. So one of those coaches would be the same coach all year, and then 1 would not be. That extra coach would do something else after the fall, but 1 would be. So same thing with girls basketball. The 1-2-1, well, one of those is doing the same thing all year. So,
but it's consistently the same 2.
Yes.
In the fall, it's consistently the same 2 junior high coaches. One will fan off in the winter,
right,
but that first one stays the same.
Absolutely.
Same person.
Certainly, and that just makes sense. And we've talked about it every way possible, but what we do and what educators in general do, it's about building relationships, and it would be a disservice to have one of those coaches build those relationships, learn the program, learn the plan, learn the head coach, and then move them out of there for a trimester or a season or whatever. So we would prefer that the same coach be there, the same softball coach be there all year. Are they having to go get the bus every day? Yes, they are, and return it. On a different night, we've talked, and there's a plan to look at what we pay the bus driving, but that's not my cheese. But I just, that is something that will come down the pike at some point. And that would be some incentive for coaches to do it. But many of our junior high coaches, particularly the freshman coaches, they want to be high school coaches. They want to be at the high school.
Yeah.
Not all of them, and that's fine. We have a place for all of them at the table. We have a place for our 7th grade and our 8th grade, but we also have a place for our 9th grade coaches. So, what questions may I answer?
Okay, Mike, let me walk me through at least a component of this. Let's just take your football example of Harwood, Euless, and Half a Central. So right now, how many freshman teams are at those schools?
It varies from year to year, but ideally we have an A and a B. We're talking about freshmen, an A and a B at Harwood, Euless, Central, but it's not always the case. It's a numbers thing.
Okay. So once we combine those, which could be 4, maybe 5 teams, when you take the freshmen and make it a super team, how many teams are we going to have?
Great question. So here's what it opens up for us to do this. Currently, we have a policy in place to where our freshmen on sports that are offered at the junior high,
Right.
they're either good enough to make the varsity or they're on the freshman team.
That's right.
They cannot play JV. We don't allow it because it would decimate, the high school coach would say, you 2 are on the varsity and you 4 are on the JV, and the rest of you are going to stay on the freshman team. And one of the reasons we want to do this, obviously, is to become more competitive. So that would move the wrong direction. So we've had that policy in place forever. The fact that these 9th graders we're talking about can't play JV. So it would open up the door. By doing this, these freshmen could be on the varsity, which they already can, but they could also be on one of the JVs, which is probably 2 teams, and one of the freshman teams, which is 2 and maybe even 3, depending on the numbers. The last thing we want to do, and the last thing our coaches or coordinators, the last thing we want to do is sink our numbers. We understand the importance of capturing, just as Mark Chandler does, of capturing every kid we possibly can and keeping them. And we do not want our numbers to go the wrong direction. We actually think this will increase our numbers. Some of the kids, let's say they don't want to play football. They get in PE, and then so they're not in athletics, and they'll stick their head out for a tryout for this team or that team. This would allow them to go straight. If they don't want to play football, then they could go to basketball and be with that coach. Mm-hmm. That coach could see them play every day, get bigger, stronger, faster, et cetera. But to your question, and I apologize for taking the long way, we would have, with the varsity, a couple of JVs and a couple of freshmen. That's 5 possible teams there. And if we, for instance, Trinity football for years, when they had the numbers to support it, always had a 3rd JV team. And we could certainly have a 3rd freshman team.
So if we had 2 or potentially 3 teams added to a football practice, logistically, do we have the room to do that?
We do. The outside sports, we certainly have the room, and the periods would be different. The football, the upper class football would be in the mornings. Is that what your coaches have explained to you? And then the freshmen would come back in the afternoon. But we've got plenty of grass and turf. The challenge is, and we've identified really one trimester, and that is the gym space, because there's a point where you have volleyball in full swing,
Yeah.
and you have basketball starting up.
Yep.
And volleyball is one thing because it's a female only, but when you add boys and girls basketball to that, all levels, so it's the fall try. It's the fall try that we are going to have to get creative, and everybody understands that. And we do have options. We have 2 very good gyms at every junior high. In all of our junior highs, we now have wood floors and glass backboards and the whole bit. We also have 22 elementaries and Midway Park sitting on adjacent to Trinity that could certainly accommodate a freshman practice in the afternoon. There's 6 goals in there, two courts running sideways and then one going long way. So, great point as far as the facilities crunch, but we've identified really the fall trimester or the fall season with volleyball, and then when basketball starts, that's really where we get crunched.
Well, and on basketball, when you take the coaches from junior high, send them up to high school to do the basketball, do you still have coaches to cover the off-season program for athletes that are not participating in basketball at the junior high level?
At the junior high level, with this proposal, every ninth grader for athletics will go to the high school, and they'll be somewhere. They'll be. Let's see. Let's just take track. No, that's not. Let's see. Yeah, we'll take track. So, let's say it's basketball season, and there's athletes that aren't playing basketball, that aren't playing soccer. We're talking about the boys right now. So no, they're not playing boys soccer. They're not playing basketball. They could be in track. They could be in football off season. There can be somewhere, you know, in the winter, it's not like they're running plays. They're getting bigger, stronger, faster. So we will identify a place to put these kids, but the idea is to take them all, And we really, this time of year, which is that we're in right now, we take them all already. We're doing that today. The shift would be, the difference would be, we would be taking them earlier, but we do take them already. What's the earliest that you start taking all of them? Yes, like
March, April.
Give me a month. Okay. So from January forward, they're all coming up. We're talking about bringing them up beginning in basically August until January.
So the ones that are coming now, in January to now. TJ just corrected me, Thanksgiving. Okay, who's bringing them? Are the coaches going to get the bus now and bringing them?
Who brought them today?
I'm driving tomorrow.
Oh, are you
Okay.
tomorrow? Okay. I see TJ often in the Pennington parking lot with a bus. But our coaches drive.
And is it one bus for everyone that you're bringing now, or is it multiple buses? Sorry to bypass you, Mike.
It only has 3+ buses depending on all the athletes. Hurst has 2, a district provided bus and a coach-driven bus.
So it's a mix right now of coaches and,
Has a Trinity and a Bell bus.
okay.
The district bus, we organize them that if they're going to the viewing, then they drop them off at Bell and continue on, or they're going to an elementary, so they drop them off at Bell.
And what happens today after they're done, after their practice or their meet or whatever is done? Where do those kids go then? Do they wait at the high school at Bell for someone to pick them up? Or does the bus take them back to Hurst Junior High?
Twofold. If they're in season, obviously they have to stay at Bell. A lot of kids get picked up at Bell, but we also have kids who have issues where they need to get on a bus. We organize that with the bus barn so they can catch a bus at Bell and get on those buses and go back.
Okay,
The toughest ones are the Hurst kiddos.
okay. So it's a mix. Some stay, some go.
Yeah, that seems like a big issue, because if this is gonna be mandated that all the kids have to go, cause like in swim, you know, the district provides a bus that goes around and picks up all the kids from all the schools, and then goes and picks up the kids at the high school and then takes them to TCC, but then they're on their own after that. There's not a bus that brings them back to Bell. So that's kind of a mix, but it seems like if we're going to make this a requirement that all kids have to go, that it would make sense to try to work it into our transportation program so it's not on the coaches, because that just seems like an extra weight that they're gonna have to carry. They're gonna have to probably already be there early, but they can't be there early to meet with their colleagues and plan out practices if they're having to go to the bus barn and pick up a bus and then take all the kids. So that just seems like a flaw in this, that it's not gonna be as effective as we want it to be if we require that coaches.
We would welcome
And
with
if a
open
coach is,
arms Brian
and
Merchant,
if a
you know,
coach is sick one day, you know, then how do the kids get there then?
and buses for us, but we're speaking on behalf of our coaching staff. We're willing to drive those buses, but we would certainly love for transportation to get
I mean, if
involved
it's something that's gonna be happening every day of the week, then we need to think more about that.
Yes, sir.
How come we're waiting 2 or 3 years?
I'm sorry?
Why are we waiting 2 to 3 years? Why are we waiting?
Okay.
So that's a good question. So the proposal overall is to do this before the next school year.
Absolutely.
The only thing that is waiting, as Andy points out, are those goal 1 and in red and green.
Correct, yes,
Okay.
I'm sorry. You bet.
I'm just going to help with that one, Andy. Part of the reason is we're not going to be adding any additional staffing. So what has to happen, as you know, as a principal, as you have teachers move on and leave, then you have to have positions open that you could attach a coaching stipend to. So if you had a 2-sport coach right now, and we want to split that, so it's 1 stipend for 1 teacher and another stipend or dual contract for another, we've got to be able to do that through attrition. That way we can do that without adding any additional staff. Does that make sense? So that's why we aren't going to be able to just do it tomorrow.
So we'll be completed in 2 years, so we're gonna start doing it as soon as possible.
Well, we've already made 2 changes right now with the baseball and the football. So we've helped Bell and we've helped Trinity just this season alone because those coaches were willing and we were able to attach the sport to another person.
I'm gonna ask CJ, since the baseball coach gets the strength and conditioning stipend, who does strength and conditioning? And that's a principal decision.
That's not a question to ask me.
Okay. Let's see, who's in charge?
I can tell you that was, again, I've been here 17 years, and that was in place well before me. That's about a 20-year deal. But yeah, it does afford Bell an extra baseball coach. Yes, sir.
Well, who makes that decision?
As far as where the stipend goes?
Yeah, I mean, who can make that decision at Trinity? Do you make the decision, or does?
On the stipend,
Make that decision?
Well, I believe, I mean, it's a collaborative effort, but ultimately, I believe the principal has control of the staffing table at their campus.
Barry, how many coaches at Trinity get a stipend for coaching that have to coach during their conference period? Tennis, baseball, what else?
No longer on tennis. Wrestling used to this year.
Okay.
The upcoming school year, we have 1 in soccer. We have 2 in football.
And 1 in
And baseball.
And 1 in baseball, correct. So 4.
Why are we having coaches coach during the conference period, which I did for 4 years? It really hurts academics. I mean, you have no time to prepare, you can't grade papers, you're there to midnight some days on game days. It's hurting academics. Why are we having coaches coach during the conference period?
And that's a great question. That's why we've brought this information forward so we can give you a comparison of what's happening. You've identified a legitimate question that we want to find a solution to, but it's hard for us to turn it over all next year because those are positions that we have to be able to split or be able to find an additional stipend. And so Mike's working really hard. HR and Cicely have done a great job to get us to this point. That's why we've got those as goals. I mean, I agree with you, Andy. Anytime you have a coach that's working through their planning period, you know exactly what that happens. That absolutely does not support the academics at the highest level. So I agree with you. We've just got to be able to work through those as quickly as possible.
You could hire 1 teacher and take 4 coaches out of their conference period.
Maybe, depending on the topic and the subject, maybe. It depends on how we cover it.
Master schedule.
Yeah.
Many years.
Yeah.
You have a person that can work that, you can do that. You can hire 1 more teacher, you can get 4 coaches.
Expensive
athletic
proposition.
period, and not have to coach during their conference period, which is gonna make them better in the classroom.
I agree.
Both sides, it's helping not only the kids in extracurricular. I'm still apologizing to the kids I had 40 years ago, by the way. I was a horrible teacher those 4 years that I never had a conference period. I went from 8 in the morning to 10 at night.
Sure.
And it's horrible. And now with what we're going through with COVID and all this other stuff, and now that you're adding that to that, I'm surprised you can keep a person doing that during the conference period, not during the time off.
Yeah, well, We agree, and so that's what's exciting about actually having the numbers and data in front of us. We can identify it now, and whatever direction and guidance you all give us, then we're able to do that in conjunction with Joe.
Question, how come Euless Junior High is the only junior high that doesn't have a gymnastics gym?
Well, I don't know the answer to that, but.
I know that Debbie Williams has won many state championships on the girls' side on Bell, and she's been very successful. She's a wonderful person and a fabulous coach. Our Euless Junior High kids don't have that opportunity.
You are correct, and it needs to happen, yes, sir.
And who's responsible for that?
Is there a space that's not being used or something?
No.
Not large enough for what, for a
And my
gymnastics.
kids, their weight room probably the worst in the district of the junior highs.
I'm sorry?
Their weight room is the worst.
At Euless?
Yes, it's the worst in the junior high in the district. So not only they're getting hurt in gymnastics, they don't have as big a weight room for all their kids, for our economically disadvantaged kids.
Now, with the proposal of the ninth graders going up to the high school and being part of that weight room, it opens up more space for the eighth graders in the afternoon. We can certainly, there are areas we certainly could use some upgrades, yes, sir, absolutely.
And how does this affect the stipends for the ninth grade teachers who are going out, or ninth grade coaches going up to the high schools?
The proposal in front of you is there's not a cost. There's not an additional cost. Things stay as is. We pilot it. We've worked very hard, and we're continuing to work for the formula that is fair to all those coaches. Going to this page again, the girls softball coach is, again, in our plan was going to get a bus and going to taking kids to the high school every day and taking the bus back and all that. But that coach only has one sport, but has it all year long. It's far different than 7th and 8th grade. A 7th grade coach and 8th grade coach is going to do, on the girls' side, is going to do volleyball, basketball, and track, for instance. But a huge difference there is high school softball season is a 6-day-a-week deal during the season. It's games on Tuesdays and Fridays. It's a lot of games on Saturdays. It's certainly practices on Saturdays. Whereas 7th and 8th grade, they have one game a week, and this is UIL rule. 7th and 8th grade can only play one game unless it's a tournament. So they're playing volleyball on a Monday or 8th grade basketball on a Thursday or whatever. So we've tried to look at how many nights are we asking our coaches to be out late. And again, we're trying to make it as equitable as we can, and to make sure that people are earning their stipend, but they're not getting mistreated.
Okay.
Was the goal in putting this together to put together a plan that didn't add units or cost?
That we tried to do exactly that, yes, sir.
If you were given the chance to bring a plan forward, the best plan you could put together, without that restraint, would you have brought a different plan?
Come on, Mike.
Yes.
I suppose, but again.
That's fine. No, that's fine. And here's why I ask, because
that's a effective and efficient. And so the task was, originally the question that was asked of us was to please put together a comparison of how we compare to other school districts, which Mike has done beautifully. He's outlined that very well. And as you addressed earlier, there may be a little one-off here in Fort Worth, whether it's 4 or 5, but that's why we took the average, because it averaged out just fine. Yes, in a perfect scenario, would it be, if Andy said, and the school board said, and Dr. Harrington said, and Cicely said, here you go, here's additional staffing, the answer is absolutely that's easier. 100% would be great for kids. But the task given to us was to identify the deficiencies and come up with this. Then Mike's second part that he did is to try and find a proposal that wouldn't add cost, be a net zero, and we do identify transportation is still an issue that we've got to hammer through, and we recognize that could be a barrier that we can't overcome. I don't think so, but it could be. And the second part that I tasked Mike with was to be sure that as we look at our junior high coaches, having been one, that Junior high coaches are 3 sports coaches. They're very, very busy. One of the things that I asked him was, we cannot have junior high coaches being junior high coaches and high school coaches and driving buses. So if transportation was able to lift that load, but we also know that's a cost. So yes, of course, that would make it tremendously much more easy. If we could add a staff or 2 or 3 at any of the high schools to offload those teachers who are having to teach their 5 periods and then take a stipend after school, we all know that's best for kids. But we're seeking that guidance from you. But what we wanted to make sure was that you had the data in front of you to be able to compare what we have and what we don't have. And we are deficient if you look at us in comparison to all the surrounding schools that are 9 through 12. We just are. And there's no bones about that. However, our coaches work really hard and our students do really, really well. Could we do better? I think so. And then the last thing I'll say is that one of the reasons Mike really started looking at this data even before you all asked for it, when you look at our freshman teams and how they do when they compete against teams outside of our own district, well, let me rephrase that, outside of our 5 junior highs, outside of Euless, which is interesting, Euless typically is the most successful.
They can hold their own.
They can hold their own against anyone on any field. Outside of that, we only beat ourselves. And we don't win against other schools. And so one of the questions that have been asked to us regularly is, why are we losing athletes to other locations? Part of it is, can we put our very best athletes against the very best athletes in our surrounding schools and districts to compete at the same level? We believe we have the best athletes in the area if we can put the best 22 or the best 10 or the best 11, depending on what the sport is. So I know that's a very long-winded answer, but I want to make sure that what we were asked to do is what Mike has done. But the answer is always, more people is always better if you're asking coaches and you're asking teachers and principals.
Well, and here's where I am, because this is presented as a proposal. So,
for
you know, and we're about to get a fine arts presentation where their recommendation is additional people. So if we're putting together the best proposal, and the best proposal includes adding units, please bring that to us, because we could say no, but let's at least see it, because if that's the best for kids, that's the best we need to do, and we need to add a unit or 2, don't not bring it to us because we want to constrain ourselves and not add units. We could always say no, and we may very well say no.
Isn't that what page 6 is with the goals? If we could just add those, wouldn't that be it?
Well, let's see, where am I?
Now you're going to add it in.
So
The one thing about that is that, as we alluded to earlier, not all of these coaches with red words out beside them want to give up their $8,000 stipend.
Right.
Yep. So one of the things that, and that's back to your original question, Andy, also, is we want to matriculate through this in a way that some coaches may say, hey, I would rather be a one-sport coach. I can focus on my sport, but it also gives me a little more balance, and I'm okay with the one stipend. There are some coaches who are second or third assistants, and I need that additional stipend. We don't want to take it from anyone. We want it to happen when, for this year, we had 2 people that agreed to that. It worked beautifully. It helped both campuses and both those coaches and sports, so we were able to do that. But to answer your question, Chris, specifically, we are absolutely able to put together a proposal that compares this one to one that identifies what specific needs we have and what that would look like, class schedule, and also what sports. We can put that together for you. It might take a couple of weeks, but we can do that.
And that's fine, because I think that's the right way to do it, because if there is a need, let's at least look at it.
Okay.
One last question I had is, how does this affect 9th grade cheerleading?
Yeah, great question. Yep.
Okay. As we pilot this, we would have the 9th grade cheerleaders continue to train, practice at their junior highs, and then they would, well, we have different grade, but at least the 9th grade cheerleaders would go and cheer for their high school, for their freshman team that's now at the high school. They might be in Bedford Junior High uniforms the first year until we know that we're in this for the long haul, and then obviously we transition and we have LD Bell freshman cheerleaders.
That brings up a good point. Are 9th graders currently able to try out for drill team? No.
No.
So in the future, could that be part of it?
Certainly, certainly, certainly. And to kind of add a detail or two about something Conrad mentioned about the competitive, and again, I happen to have our 9th grade football results in front of me here. Besides playing our 5, which all, each of them would play 4, right? If you're one of the 5, you play the 4 others. Outside of that, our teams were 6-20, and we were 2-6 against the smallest schools: Salina, Brock, Argyle, and let's see who else. And these are 4As. These are smaller than we are. Melissa, Crum. We lost to Crum 29-0 as a freshman team.
Which freshman team? Does it matter?
That happened to be Hurst. But as I mentioned, as a district, we were 2-6 against these smaller districts. We are, again, putting our kids at a competitive disadvantage whenever those Crum middle schools are now at the high school, and our guys or gals are still at the junior high.
Yeah.
And again, this is certainly, we would do really well. Our bringing our 2.5 freshman teams together per side of the district, we would be extremely competitive. And TJ, do you want to add anything to that as far as what value it would present to have your kids a year earlier?
I think the major thing is vertical alignment and continuity within the program too. I mean, just that we're already doing it 2 of the 3 trimesters in most sports, and so I guess the question I have, and I've worked in other districts, and obviously I live in HEB, and my kids go to school here, is that very question that you just brought up. To give them the best competitive advantage. Obviously, we want as many football teams as we can have at every level, and staffing is a part of that. But I think when a kid goes out and you take the best kids from those 2.5 feeders and you put them together, and you have an A team, a B team, and a possible C team, and they're competitive every week, and they're tied into your system. And not only that, something that wasn't brought up, but now those freshman coaches go back down there and they are in the 7th period athletics with the 7th graders, and those coaches, again, we're vertically aligning our athletic programs, and we're coaching coaches as well as the kids, which I think is going to have a huge impact.
Yeah, and I see the synergy in when you break up into your position groups with your position coaches, right? Because the O-line kids from the 9th grade, if they're with the O-line kids coach from the high school during that time, everybody's just better, right?
So just to close this, unless you have additional questions, as a continuous improvement district, we've been doing it this way. Obviously, I'm still new to it, but at least 20-something years. And we're seeing some of the positives, but we're also seeing some of the negatives. We want Bell and we want Trinity to be the most competitive 6A high schools that we can be in North Texas and across the state. I believe we have the kids and the coaches to do it, but we have a system that may not be aligning perfectly, and we're getting the results that we expect to get. So why wouldn't we want our freshmen to be able to compete? And here's the thing, winning brings about winning, and winning programs inspire other programs. And the other thing too, recruitment and retention are crucial over the next 10 years from what we're coming out of. When you have winning programs, you attract winning coaches. And TJ and his team and Aaron Lineweaver and those folks, we wanted them because they're winners, and we want to continue that tradition. But more importantly, it gives our kids opportunity beyond high school. And so this isn't just about because it's easier or harder. It's let's try something different and see if we get a better result. And if we don't, guess what? We can always go back to what we were doing because we know how to do that really well. So I just wanted to conclude with that.
Well, I learned from Andy Cargile that they don't always come to school for math. They come to school for the stuff after school.
Absolutely, and Andy knows that.
And this feels like a way to make what we're doing in these sports better for the long haul.
So I just want to make sure before we step off this podium that we know our charge. I want to, one, it sounds like you'd like us to explore the transportation further, that you'd like us to look at the impact on junior high coaches more specifically based on what Mike originally proposed, and then further working with Cicely and her team and Dr. Harrington, if there was a request for additional staffing, what that would look like and how many it would be. Is that an accurate summary?
I think that's great. And I think that getting here tonight to have this conversation, really appreciate you, Mike. We had some difficult questions for you, but don't take that wrong. I'm generally in favor of this. I just want to make sure we're doing it right and doing the best we can. But to have this conversation is the right time, so I appreciate you.
I'm grateful for the questions because this is 25 years in coming.
Right.
And I knew, and I think everybody here knew, and I didn't ask coaches. I wanted the coordinators to be here, but TJ came because I think he knew, and everybody knew this is a big deal. This is a really big deal. And as Conrad said, it could be hard or easy. Well, this is hard, but it's best for kids, and we're going to have to grind through it.
I asked Dr. Harrington about this when he first got to this district, because of course my son was at a true disadvantage in this program that's set up this way.
Yeah,
I didn't have a statement before we leave.
Okay.
Somebody brought up cheerleading, I didn't. Somebody else did. I've been to many 7th and 8th grade football, basketball, track. Many of the football and basketball games, we either had no cheerleaders or 1 or 2. Collierville had 12, 10. In all football games, we'd have none. They'd have 10. I asked the junior highs if they had a cheerleading period, and they said no. And I remember Hoot Smith said, you're only good at what you emphasize. So we're not emphasizing that. Therefore, we're losing cheerleaders in high school. I don't understand why they don't have a dance class in junior high. A lot of girls would like to take dance. Our drill team, 25. Allen, 80. I know they have more kids. Go to a smaller school. They have 50. We have 25. It seems like we should be emphasizing those also in the junior highs, cheerleading or dance or something, because there's a lot of kids that go home at 4 o'clock on the bus. They can't be a cheerleader. But if you had a cheerleader class, they could be a cheerleader. Yes, sir. They can't go to club cheer because they don't have the money.
Yeah, and Andy, you're spot on. I mean, you see that with academics. When we can do in-house tutoring, we get better performance than trying to keep kids after school, especially based on our economically disadvantaged kiddos.
Please
So,
take the pressure off the junior high principals.
so
And give them a chance to maybe consider that for those kids that wouldn't be able to do it any other way.
I'm certainly happy to have that conversation and look at that with the master schedule with them. Let us get through this one, and then Andy, I'll meet with those 5 and we'll talk about that. But I do want it to be consistent with whatever we do so that it's fair across our district. But I want to thank Mike and everyone on his team. They've worked really hard. We appreciate the hard questions. That'll make us better.
We do.
So how does this affect the athletic alignment within the district if all of a sudden 3 teams disappear? If you go from having, I may be thinking about it wrong, but right now you have 5 junior high teams, right, who are all competing and apparently losing to everyone outside of the other 5. If they all go and you take those 2.5 and they become 1, then you're losing 3 teams out of the district that you normally play.
We'll just have to schedule with other area schools.
So
you're
that's
right.
something that's done within the athletic departments that you schedule.
So scheduling is very tricky for our junior highs because Bell is playing somebody. Let's say Bell's playing MacArthur, Trinity's playing Allen. So Hurst and Harwood both have an opponent. These 3 don't. That's why they're traveling to,
Crumb.
goodness.
And Melissa.
They're traveling.
So it'll be easier to schedule your
Valley
games.
View.
This would make 9th grade scheduling 100 times easier.
Because you only need to have 2 schedules.
Exactly,
not-
and they follow, like every other school, every other high school around us, they will simply follow their varsity. Whoever their varsity whoever the varsity's playing, their JV is playing, their sophomore team's playing, their 9th grade AB is playing. We don't, for 2 of our teams of our 5 each week, we do have that. For the other 3, we don't. They may play each other one time, those 3, but then we're out looking for games and anywhere and everywhere.
Looking to get beat.
All right, well, thanks for that answer. Any other questions? All right, appreciate it, Mike.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
All right. Mr. Chandler, it's your turn.
Good job, Coach Miller. Good evening. Thank you for letting us both speak to you. Absolutely. First of all, let me say what a great problem we have in that we are building relationships with all of these great kids that we're talking about. athletes, visual and performing arts kids. We're all trying to reach out to these kids and get them all to be actively engaged in what we know are the things that keep them in school, right, Andy Cargile? We know why they come to school. And they come to school to study, but they come to school to be a part of our programs. So I will say to you that in our current configuration, we are not immediately feasible to have our ninth grade students compete at the high school programs. We can't simply pick our ninth grade band kids, for instance, up and take them to the high school. We are competing at a very high level. As a matter of fact, all of our junior high bands, non-varsity and varsity bands, made straight ones sweepstakes ratings last week at UIL contests. So we are competing at a very high level within our current grade configuration, okay? Now you guys all know that 7th grade is our beginning year, okay, for our band, for our performing arts groups, okay? A few of those kids trickle in from Suzuki Strings that have already played for a while, and so they go right into either their non-varsity group at Central or maybe right into the varsity orchestra. But for band and choir, those kids that are going to participate at a UIL event, our beginning year is 7th grade. So in our current grading configuration, we don't have this same kind of option to do things like this with our 9th grade. If we're having a 9th grade football team, what happens to the band when they would go out and play for a football game at the junior high? I don't know. We'll have to work that out, okay? But anyway, under our current grade configuration, we are 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. We are the only triple B UIL classification left in the state. Literally, the only one left in the state, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. So our 9th graders are competing at a very high level within visual and performing arts programs, particularly the performing arts. So I wanted you to hear that a little bit about where we are with 9th graders that are particularly in our performing arts groups, okay? So we are also supporting Goal 4.2, Focus on the Whole Child. We're honored to be here tonight. One of the things that I'm going to focus on tonight is high school theater. You guys probably are aware that both of our high school theater groups advanced to the next round, and actually Bell High School Theater advanced to the 3rd round in one-act play. That's one of my department goals within the district, is that our high school theater programs begin to advance. They are. I took Trinity High School their medals today for advancing to the next round, and I also have the medals from UIL for Bell advancing to the area round, all the way to Odessa that day. It was a long trip, okay? However, let's look at some benchmark comparisons with some of our districts around. We are, HEB, we have 1 theater director at each high school. That's a total of 2 high school theater directors in this district. I'm not going to read all these to you, but let's talk about some of them. Birdville has 7 total in the district. BHS and RHS have 2 each, and Haltom has 3. And you can kind of see there what they're teaching. Most of these are teaching acting and production, which would be theater 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then the technical side of this, technical theater 1, 2, 3, and 4. GCISD, 2 theater directors at each high school. Again, theater and technical theater. South Lake Carroll, they have 2 directors actually at each campus because they have a high school campus and a senior high campus. Northwest ISD has 2 directors at their high schools. Keller has 4, and you can see that they split their duties out a little bit differently, all the way down to the improv, movement, and stage combat that another director would teach. That, in my mind, that falls under technical theater a little bit more than just regular theater, but they have 4 at each campus. Louisville has 4 directors at Flower Mound. All other high schools have 3, and you can see that they're acting in production, technical theater, and then the last one is costumes, props, and sound, and very likely also the theater manager, where they take up all the work that if somebody comes into the auditorium and says, I need a microphone, there's their go-to person right there, okay? So that's just some of the schools that we're competing with. We compete with some of these schools, but those are the ones that are kind of around us that we benchmark against, okay? Now, this question, what does go on behind the scenes? We know for sure that for every scene on stage, there are at least 3 supporting crew members to back each one of them up. Well, the backups for each one of those scenes are students. So who's backing up the students? In the slide you just saw before, it's the technical theater people that are teaching these broad brush strokes of lighting and sound, makeup and costumes, sets and props. And we all know that without those things happening on stage, it's kind of a bare theater stage. There's not much happening. So this is one of the things that we use to talk about technical theater. It also becomes a matter of safety and curriculum. Technical theater teaks are not the same as regular theater 1, 2, 3, and 4 teaks. They have a different focus, and their focus is going to be on safety with what could be a potentially hazardous environment. So we've got to be sure that having a technical theater that has historical value to it and understands now that we apply state-of-the-art electronics and digital elements of the craft are keeping us active in what we're doing. Theater looks a whole lot different than it did, when I was in high school, okay? You were pulling curtains and pulling lights and doing all that kind of thing, and now it's push button and there it all goes, okay? So technical theater is a huge piece of where I believe we're kind of short. Our technical theater directors, or theater directors in general, this is just an idea of what some of these folks teach. They're going to teach theater 1, 2, 3, and 4. But that person may also teach the acting and production side of it, the improv troupe, the directing and the production part of what they might do. But then the technical theater person will likely do these elements of stage combat, lighting and sound design. Both directors would likely do musical theater. The tech director would do makeup and costume. Both directors would do playwriting and student-directed plays. The technical theater director would do set designs and props. And both theater directors would likely be the one to teach students about theater management and front-of-house management. And quite honestly, nowadays, sound and light design and theater management are two huge emerging programs in college where our kids are they're earning a high wage by being a part of these things. So that's hugely important that our kids, that directors would be able to promote for our kids if we have that, okay? So, questions about theater for the moment? Very good. I go on to high school band. Bell High School Band currently has 4 directors, one of which is the percussion specialist that services the entire cluster. That would be Hurst-Bedford and part of Central. Actually, no. The Bell Band directors only do Bedford and Hurst. Trinity covers Central, okay? The other 2 assist at the feeder junior highs. Trinity has 3 directors, one of which is a percussion specialist that services the cluster feeder. Both other directors at Trinity assist in their junior high feeder programs, okay? So, this is just some other comparisons about what we're benchmarking against. Birdville ISD and their high schools have 10 directors total. BHS and RHS have 3 each, plus a percussion director. Haltom has 4. Now, I wrote down here some of the things that how they staff color guard and percussion techs, color guard directors and percussion techs. You'll notice that Birdville pays them as part-time employees. GCISD has 4 directors at each high school. They hire techs as contractors. And if we're not familiar with what I'm talking about, techs, we're talking about the people that come and run around on the field with both the front ensemble and the battery ensemble, and those people that help guide them on a consistent basis, okay? So they're contractors. They come in and assist with that. South Lake Carroll has 4 directors. I'm sorry?
Mr. Chandler, so
Yeah.
the rest of the board knows, like at Bell, which is the band I'm familiar with.
Yes, sir.
You have the 4 band directors, and then you probably have 8 to 10 techs that are paid for by band fees.
Yes, sir.
Right, okay.
That is correct. South Lake Carroll has 4 directors, again, at each high school, their high school and their senior high. Northwest ISD has 3 directors at each campus. Keller ISD, 3 directors at each campus, plus a percussion specialist for their feeder pattern. Louisville ISD has 4 directors at Flower Mound Marcus, and all the other high schools have 3. And notice here that their color guard director is a paraprofessional position. Okay, so that's kind of an interesting take on how to staff that position. So, all of this, I know that was kind of a quick overview, and you may have some questions for me, but these are the considerations that I would like to bring to you. That we add a full-time technical theater director at both Bell and Trinity. That we create the stipends for that teacher and maintain that stipend that will be in line with other HEB colleagues of that same level of work that they're doing. I also ask that we add a full-time band director position for Trinity and maintain equity between both of the high schools. So those are the considerations that I have to bring forward to you today, and we always appreciate your help and support for all of our programs. We all know that you guys are here all about kids, and Coach Fielder and his staff and me and my staff are also all about kids. We want them to succeed in the best way possible. So we want them to be active in our programs, we want them to participate, and there you go.
Mark, could you explain real quick, since Bedford and Harwood's are schools of choice now for drama?
Yes, sir.
Could you tell me the attendance or involvement that's going on at both of those schools? Is it like 20 kids, is it 100 kids, or how many's involved in that?
Both programs are exceptionally full, over 100 at both. Bedford is actually just busting out the door. And just so you know, Bedford competed in the junior high one-act play competition and won every award and best in show. They swept the competition of what's going on. Harwood is full, but not to quite that level of production and competition yet. But their programs are full too. And we are starting to see those kids matriculate up into the high school theater programs.
So when I was at Trinity, we did have a second director.
Yes, sir.
What happened?
That person, several years ago, when there were budget shortfalls that actually were a problem from the state and not from HEB, we lost a lot of funding, and some of those people had to be absorbed into the English classroom or other places. So we lost that director at that time. That's been several years ago now. I want to say 2008, 2010, maybe. I forget when it was.
I think the director
08, yeah.
is now the director of South Lake Carroll.
Yes, she is, as a matter of fact.
Mr. Chandler, can you just clarify for me, because I want to make sure I'm 100% on board with this. I'm looking at the considerations page.
Yes, ma'am.
Adding a full-time technical director at both schools. So they would teach technical 1, 2, 3, and 4. Their whole entire day would be theater technical, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then this second one is where I'm confused. Create a theater stipend for a second teacher. Are you saying that stipend goes to that new full-time person?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, we just need to be sure if we're going to hire that person that we develop the stipend that goes along with them.
Yeah, because they have the stipend for the stuff that they do after school.
Got it.
Right. I mean, both directors would be involved in all UIL activities, plus all of the other shows that they develop throughout their year.
Got it.
Yep.
Yeah, well, it's great to hear that our junior high programs are full. How big are the two high school programs in theater?
I knew you were going to ask me enrollment data, and I didn't bring it. I would say to you that both high school programs are at about 125 to 135.
Okay.
They're full.
Yeah.
Particularly the Theater 1 classes. As we all know, Theater 1 counts for their students, their fine arts credit. Absolutely.
Yeah,
so a lot of them go into Theater 1.
It's always one piece of data to look at program versus program, and maybe in a 6A football program versus a 6A football program, they're going to be pretty similar. But if you're looking at, say, two golfing programs, if you're trying to compare the coaching at golf at Bell versus coaching at golf at South Lake, you could have a big disparity in the number of students participating, which would require a different number of coaches.
Yes.
And it's kind of the same in theater and band and all those other things. The more kids you got, the more help you need. So,
Absolutely.
But it's great when someone gets engaged and starts engaging kids so much that the programs do grow. And we certainly want to be here to support that and make sure that they have the help they need so the programs don't have to shrink again.
Yes, sir.
And kids
And
can
you guys also will remember that we added 2 schools of choice elementary theater programs.
So they're just going to keep going.
They're just going. We've been talking about the vertical alignment piece. There's our vertical alignment piece. And it is starting to pay off in both areas. Those kids at Arbor Creek and Trinity Lakes are starting to go to their junior high theater programs, and they are going on up as well. So we're having good success with them.
Elementary schools this year doing musicals.
Yes, ma'am.
A lot of them.
Yes. I believe that Trinity Lakes next week is doing E-I-E-I Oops
Yep.
which is a neat little kids musical.
I'm going to Wilshire, and I got an invitation for Donna Park, but I had it's the same night, I think, as Wilshire, but there's
Yep.
probably 6 of them, I want to say, this year, elementary schools doing musicals.
Yep, they're little Disney juniors and Broadway juniors and
Lion King.
Lion King. Absolutely.
Schoolhouse Rock.
Yep. They're doing that, and they're doing it very nicely. They're performing very nicely. They're always cute and precious, but they're doing it very well.
They're pretty funny.
Yeah, they are.
But I love it at the elementary school and seeing then the difference between the kids at the elementary school where they're just learning to be out in front of people. They're scared to death. You can see their legs shaking, but they just feel so brave and you can see it. And then at the junior high level, they're starting to get their confidence. And I saw that there's a huge difference in Bedford Junior High from last year to this year with those same kids.
Yes,
There
ma'am.
is a huge difference in their performance from last year.
Absolutely.
and
Yeah, we're
then,
not trying to
you know-
teach virtual theater this year, so it's
Yeah.
had a huge advantage.
Well, maybe, okay, so yeah, you're right. So it was maybe pre-COVID that
Yeah.
they did, there was something else that they had done, but I've seen a huge leap in those kids at Bedford.
Absolutely. Well, and you saw the show they did this year. It was a very difficult show for junior high kids to put on, a very strong subject, and they did it to a very high level.
And the better kids that you start to grow up, the more shows like that they'll choose. Because when you go to UIL competitions, those are the shows that are probably going to get the most attention, are the ones that are much harder.
Absolutely. The shows that we competed against at the area level with LD Bell out in Midland, Odessa, they all had a full staff of people there to assist them. And they weren't parent volunteers or whatever, they were theater people. So it does make a big difference.
All right, any more questions?
Mark, for these staffing considerations, do you have a projected cost for these positions?
Yes, sir. The 2 theater directors would be whatever current staffing table is assigned by HR. And I'm not sure exactly what that level is, but it would be a full staff, a full salary. And then depending on how we align the stipends, that would be, I'm not even going to try and quote a staffing number, but it would be the cost of a salary and a stipend for each one of these people. And the same for band, a full director.
What I really appreciate about this is you're telling us what you need, and then we could figure out whether or not, within our budget we can do it.
Yes, sir.
And that's one of the reasons I'm really happy that we're going to have a budget session as a board, because this is something that we can discuss. We're in April. What needs to happen if this consideration is for the fall?
Then we began to post job postings and hiring people. If this is approved and you come back and tell Dr. Harrington and Conrad and Cicely and I that we are ready to start that, then principals and I will begin interviewing candidates and find people as soon as possible. As you know, we get much further into the school year and the pool starts to get a little bit more shallow.
Yeah. Well, I'd like for us to at least consider doing this, within what we can do financially.
Yes,
but,
sir.
Not just sit here and listen to your consideration and then say, thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
We appreciate you telling us, but actually do something about it. So let's, if we can, when we go through our budget as a board, and Dr. Harrington works with HR, what this looks like and if it's feasible, and if the need is really there, we can have that discussion. So this doesn't get kicked down the road and we have this same presentation next year.
So Chris, what we can do on this particular one, since it was a very specific ask for, we'll work with Cicely to give you an exact number, and we can include that in a Friday update, just so that you can see a ballpark number right out of the gate. And then obviously we'll work with Cicely to determine on the staffing and add that to the other information you're going to be receiving over the next week or two. And then we'll continue to work on the athletics one, but we can get this one to you very quickly so that you can at least begin to look at those numbers, and we'll get that for you ASAP.
Thanks, Conrad.
All right, any additional questions?
Thank you all. We
Thank
do
you, Mr. Chairman.
appreciate your support.
Thank
always.
you.
Thank you.
All right, we are ready for action items. We did not have any items removed from the consent agenda, so 12.02, consider of approval of Chapter 21 contracts.
Are there any questions from the board?
No.
Any questions about the contracts? All right, this is an action item, so I'll accept a motion.
I move the board approve the Chapter 21 contracts as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the Chapter 21 contracts as submitted. Please vote. That motion passes. Approval of non-Chapter 21 contracts. Any questions on those? Accept the motion.
I move the board approve the non-Chapter 21 contracts as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that the board approves the non-Chapter 21 contracts as submitted. Please vote. That motion passes. Consider approval of AIA B101-2017 Standard Form of Agreement between HEBISD and Corrigan Associates Incorporated. Any questions?
I do have a question. The version that we have loaded on board docs is the redlined markup. Do we have a clean version to approve?
Yes, I'm assuming we do. Yes, we wanted, I think we purposely loaded the red line document. So
I like seeing the red line, but I just want to make sure that when we're voting on the clean one.
yes, if we don't, we'll get one.
Okay.
Clean. Ms. Smith with Corrigan Architects is out in the audience, so.
There is a clean version?
Yes.
Okay.
We will get one. If, I haven't seen the hand, are these signed? Because we do have signed.
Well, it's not signed yet.
No.
Okay, the ones we have are
Are
signed.
you asking what the one that will be signed be
So-
the clean version?
So the version that you have there for us
Well,
to
I
sign
wanna
after this
vote on
vote
a
is
clean
clean.
version.
Yeah, should be right there.
Yes, these are not redlined.
Okay. Are all of the red lines that we're seeing accepted in that clean version?
Say it again.
Are all the red lines in the version that we're seeing, have all of them been accepted
in this version.
in the clean version?
Yes.
Okay.
If there aren't any more questions, I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the contract with Corrigan Associates Incorporated for the renovation projects of LD Bell High School and Trinity High School.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the contract with Corrigan Associates Incorporated for the renovation projects at LD Bell High School and Trinity High School. Please vote. And that motion passes. All right, 12.05, consider approval of CSP 22-10 re-roofing of the district transition center. Are there any questions on this project?
I do have one question. Dobie, in the communique where it says that the roofing of the building will be a separate portion of the project, is the $300,000 for the roofing still within the $2.7 million that we approved for the full project?
Yes, we had an allowance in there, architects had an allowance in there for that, and yes.
Okay, so just because it's a separate portion here, it doesn't mean that we're changing the overall scope
Josh may
and
wanna
price
add
of the
to that.
project?
We separated that because of long lead times, to be able to get that roof moving now before we can, basically to be delayed a month for the rest of the award. So we're trying to get that moving going now.
But it is part of the 2.7. Okay.
So later we'll be, no, we already approved the general contractor for this? So that'll be later. So right now we're doing the roof, and then we'll have a general contract for the rest, but we want to get the materials moving because you can't get metal and you can't get anything.
Yeah, we're trying to move as fast as possible to beat cost escalations and all those things.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the Flynn BEC LP for the district trans center roofing projects.
Second.
I have a motion, a second for the board to approve Flynn BEC LP for the district transition center roofing project. Please vote. That motion passes. Consider approval of RFP 22-08, CNS kitchen equipment, including serving lines for 4 campuses. Any questions? I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approve RFP 22-08 for child nutrition kitchen equipment and serving lines at 4 campuses to Supreme Fixture Company.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve RFP 22-08 for child nutrition kitchen equipment and serving lines for 4 campuses to Supreme Fixture Company. Please vote. And that motion passes. Marcella, I'm always impressed by how much you get done with with your money. Year after year, you're always doing these big projects out of your reserve funds. So another great year. All right. 22.07, consider approval of RFP 22-09, Bedford Heights Elementary School serving lines. Any questions? I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approve RFP number 22-09 for the serving lines at Bedford Heights Elementary School to Supreme Fixture Company.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve RFP 22-09 for the serving lines at Bedford Heights Elementary School to Supreme Fixture Company. Please vote.
Are these in rotation or these just came up to be fixed?
I'm sorry.
Are these in a rotation, like every 6 months we're gonna do 4, and then another year we'll do 4, and another year we'll do 4? Or these just came up?
Well, we are trying to, yes and no. Yes, as in we're fixing as or replacing as we have sufficient fund balance.
Okay,
And we're replacing the worst ones first.
okay.
So the oldest.
So they are in rotation. Thank you. But some people would say, why not mine? I know that some
Well,
principals do.
a lot of them have been done.
Me too.
And that motion passes. All right, 12.08, consider approval of instructional materials allotment, IMA, TEAC certificate for the 2022-2023 school year. Are there any questions? I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the instructional materials allotment, TEAC certification for 2022-2023 school year.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the instructional materials allotment, TEAC certification for the 2022-2023 school year. Please vote. That motion passes. All right, 12.09, consider approval of recommendations for health education, instructional materials, plus curriculum materials regarding human sexuality instruction.
Okay, I am here tonight. Every year when we have local instructional materials to adopt, we bring those to you. This year there were some additional considerations, so you actually get a small presentation here. Every year, it's a proclamation set by TEA designating what content areas are going to be adopting instructional materials for the fall of that year. And then we have our local instructional materials committee that works through that process. You approved the names that were given to you of that committee last fall. Proclamation 2022 includes PE and health education. The State Board of Education releases a list of the products that they've reviewed for appropriate alignment to our TEACs. So after each proclamation, we get a list from the State Board of Education that says, these have 100% TEACs alignment. Very much like the TEAC certification that you just voted on. That's part of what we look to that list to know that the materials that we're considering are aligned. There are other paths to verifying that alignment, but that's one of the surest because it's been set out from the beginning of the proclamation. So the only publisher to make that list for secondary health education was Goodhart Wilcox. So because the TEACs for health education include human sexuality, new requirements have our School Health Advisory Council, the SHAC, also review the materials. So we were already in the process of our local instructional materials, and now we've added in a SHAC review of these materials as well. The publisher, that single publisher that we're looking at, has separated the material. So there's a primary resource and a companion resource. So while we're 100% in alignment of the TEKS, they were taken into the opt-in piece that is separate for parents to consider, is actually a separate resource. So not every student has access to that unless they have opted in. Their parents have opted in for them. So I'm actually bringing you a recommendation from both the Local Instructional Materials Committee, having moved through their process, and the SHAC through a series of meetings. They've held 2 meetings on the topic, and they're voting on this recommendation that Goodhart-Willcox materials is what we adopt for health education in our secondary schools. Have any questions for me?
Any questions on that?
Was this unanimously approved by the SHAC?
Yes, I was going to say, I'm not on the SHAC, but our representatives here, yes.
Any other questions? I'll accept a motion.
I move the board approve the recommendations regarding instructional materials from the Local Instructional Material Committee and the School Health Advisory Council.
Second.
I have a motion that the board approve the recommendations regarding instructional materials from the Local Instructional Materials Committee and the School Health Advisory Council. Please vote. That motion passes. Item 1210, consider approval of employment recommendations. Any questions? I'll accept a motion.
I move the board approve the employments as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the employments as submitted. Please vote. That motion passes. All right, we are ready for open forum number 2. Thank you. All right, when you're called up, please state your name. Your time will begin when you start speaking. You have 3 minutes. Your time will be remaining. Your time remaining will appear on the overhead screen. We respectfully ask that you conclude your remarks at the end of your time. First speaker is Stephen Beckman.
I'm going to preface this by saying I'm going to try to be kind. Spoke with someone today, said, hey, if you go and speak at the board meeting, please try to be kind. However, the level of contempt that this board shows for the public makes that increasingly difficult. The lack of responsiveness that you have to myself, my family, other concerned members of this community, it's sickening. Okay, we've been coming for weeks, more than weeks, raising concerns that go unanswered. We come up with things, we come with solutions. We're not just here with rabble-rousing with problems. We come with solutions. No one listens. Okay? Then we see something on the agenda. It looks like maybe some of those complaints have been heard. And then for whatever reason, agenda item 8.02 gets moved to the end of the meeting. What time is that going to be? 9:30, 10 o'clock? So you can have your public motion or whatever action you're going to consider against Mr. Campos, you're going to take that, whatever action that you're going to take, right? In public, in front of as few eyes as possible, is what that looks like. It's a cowardly move. This is Fort Worth ISD type stuff. Moving the board meeting locations, things like that, when they don't want to hear from their constituents. And I mean, I know it's a rhetorical question, but how am I supposed to interpret this otherwise? How am I supposed to interpret it? Dr. Harrington, I carbon copied you on an email last week about the concern that I mentioned 2 weeks ago. I have not heard anything back about that. I gave you another member of the executive leadership team quite a few examples of why we have concerns about the technology usage in schools. Instagram pages that show inappropriate uses of technology in classroom, not out of school. Pictures taken within classes that are posted to Instagram. Fights that are happening in our junior highs that are posted to Instagram. I sent that, and again, I don't hear anything back. So it's frustrating, Mr. Romero. It's frustrating to sit here week after week after week to watch this process play out and to feel essentially, it's essentially like you're telling me and you're telling others with concerns that our input is not valued, despite what your president's statement is that you read every week. Our input is not valued. It's not taken into account. Not when this is the response. Now, I don't know how else to interpret it. Okay? Mr. Brown, I want to thank you. You're the one member up here that's here to do serious work. I really do appreciate your questions. Otherwise, some of this stuff would get passed through without a plan or any knowledge of what's going on. We have one member who's here to do serious work. The rest of y'all could go a long way to act like that man right there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next speaker is Miranda Beckman. Miranda Beckman?
I don't have a planned statement, so bear with me. My husband we share the same thoughts. We have come to these meetings since May of last year, and our concerns are not heard. Moving whatever you're going to do for Mr. Campos to the end is cowardly, just like Stephen said. I absolutely agree with that. This place was full, and you had the opportunity for the community to see what is happening up here at these board meetings, and you do this week after week. You put all the serious stuff to the end when people have cleared out. And then when I look out here, there's the same 5 people that are sitting up here bringing their concerns week after week. I want to talk about tonight's meeting. Dr. Norgard presented information for the umpteenth time about academics in this district. Your goal is 100% of your students meeting the objectives on these DBAs. 100% meets. That would be the kids are ready to move to the next grade level. I don't know if y'all fully understand this, and I'm not trying to be condescending. 40 to 50% of our kids in the elementary and in the junior high levels are at meets. So when you prepared this academic and then the athletics presentation, you spent 45 minutes talking about athletics. You never spend 45 minutes talking about academics. You never. You're not even going to have 9th graders who are going to be able to read in a few years, and then you're talking about busing them to the high school. Sometimes I feel like there's circus music playing when I'm watching what's happening up here, and I hate to be that blunt, but that's how I feel. And as far as the athletics and the kids moving, maybe you need to consider a 9th grade center. Maybe you need to consider moving 9th grade to high school. I don't think that you're taking into consideration the impact on our students. You have moved everything online for our students to learn. You cannot learn on your computer and complete and submit homework while you're waiting at Central Junior High to go to Bell, to stay till 5:30 or 6 for practice, and then ride the bus back to Central. These kids are so stressed right now. Technology is causing so many issues. They can't do their homework. If they play select soccer and they've got a 3-hour practice and a 45-minute drive, they can't get things done if it's all online. I have brought you so many suggestions and concerns about technology. You approved the math curriculum tonight. It's all online. You're not going to ever hand a kid a textbook to learn math. The health, you're going to do it online. What is going to slip in that parents are not going to be aware of? Your transparency has to improve. Your communication has to improve. You guys need some serious answers.
All right, other business. We have an opportunity for board members to request items be placed on future board agendas. Anybody have anything to add? All right, 14.02, consider approval of designee of board of Is that written right?
Delegate.
Delegate and alternate to the TASB Delegate Assembly. So this is something that we do every year for the TASB Delegate Assembly. Right now, we have 2 board members who are on the goal team in terms of advocacy, and we also have a LAC member. So I would think that one of those 3 would be a great fit for doing this. Anybody have a?
First, I want to ask, do you all want to continue serving another year in the same capacity before doing that?
I didn't have any.
I would be willing to be the designee.
Okay. Does anybody else have a
I love
desire?
doing it, but I've done it, I did it last year.
Yeah.
And I've done it before.
And you
Would
were
like
the
to do it, Chris?
you were the alternate last year?
My schedule will allow it, so.
It's a one day, it's held during a conference you're already gonna be attending, so it's not an additional.
You may or may not. It's
And it's in,
in San Antonio this year, so.
I'm doing the Fort Worth one rather than San Antonio.
Oh, this isn't at, this is at TASB. This will be in September, October. Yeah.
Well, if it's in San Antonio, no.
Okay. So
it's
who,
something you should consider going to eventually, because it talks about how we do our business at the state level, so keep that in mind.
who would like to be an alternate? Don, would you like to be the alternate? Okay. So, I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approves a designee of Don Jordan Wells to serve as delegate, Julie Cole to serve as delegate and Don Jordan Wells to serve as alternate to the TASB Delegation Assembly.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve Julie Cole to serve as delegate and Don Jordan Wells to serve as alternate to the TASB Delegate Assembly. Please vote. That motion passes. All right, next we have approval of a designated board delegate to the Education Foundation. Any discussion on this?
I have done this for several years, and I would be willing to continue.
All right.
Anybody else interested in doing that?
All right, I will accept a motion. I'll accept a motion.
I move the board approves the designee of Julie Cole to serve as delegate for Education Foundation.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that the board approves designee Julie Cole to serve as the delegate to the Education Foundation. Please vote. And that motion passes. Thank you, Julie. All right, so next we are going to consider approval of a selection nominating committee for board officers. I think y'all are familiar with how we do this. We'll draw some names, and the first 3 names that get drawn will be our nominating committee. So who wants to draw?
I think,
I'll let Don draw first. Julie can draw names.
Andy Cargo?
Don Jordan Wells.
Chris Brown.
Outstanding.
All right. As board president, I'm supposed to appoint a leader of this committee, so I'll ask Don if you'll. Well, you're the senior person.
Senior member.
If you're deferring to me, I'm happy to defer.
Okay.
But it is mass decision.
All right, so Chris will lead that committee. Let's see. Then 14.05, report on board goal number 3, advocacy. Oh,
Oh, yeah.
okay. Sorry about that. I don't think so.
I move that the board approve Dawn Jordan Wells, Chris Brown, and Andy Cargile to participate in the board officer nominating committee.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for Don Jordan Wells, Chris Brown, and Eddie Cargile to participate in the board officer nominating committee. Please vote. And that motion passes. Okay, now we're ready for the report to the board, Goal 3.
Alrighty. Fred and I, of course, are the gold champions for Board Goal 3, which is advocacy. And we conducted our second mid-cycle review on April the 11th of 2022. At that time, we determined that we have met all the actions according to the timeline established in the board goal. A quick summary of those actions include updating the advocacy process, updating, and of course that process is in our board operating procedures, updating the board activity chart that goes around to include advocacy event conversations. So the event you mentioned that you had with, the meeting rather you had with a locally elected official, make sure that you add that on there. Development of an advocacy tracking document that we will use beginning in the fall after the November elections have taken place. We didn't want to show that to you yet because the names on there are not going to be current come November. So we will share that with you once we have the new people on there. We worked with everyone here to prioritize that transition funding was going to be our one legislative priority that we'll all get behind right now. And we developed and distributed these talking points related to transition funding for use as we communicate with members of the current legislative body. And our next update to you is scheduled for October 3rd, 2022.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions from anyone on the board about that update? All right,
Yeah.
so at this time, pursuant to Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, the board will adjourn to closed session pursuant to Section 551.071 to 551.074.
Can we go to the bathroom real quick? Can we go to the bathroom real quick?
We're all here. All right, the board is back in open session. We are going to go back to item 8.02, consider complaints about board member. At this time, I have a statement from the board to read. This is a censure resolution of the Board of Trustees, the Hurst-Euless-Bedford Independent School District. Whereas the Hurst-Euless-Bedford Independent School District Board of Trustees is committed to act as trustees of public education and adhere to the principles of ethics established by the board and board policy. Whereas the Board of Trustees expects board members to conduct themselves in a manner that is consistent with their oath of office, their obligation to work to strengthen the district's schools in the district, and their duty to promote the best interests of the district as a whole. Whereas Board Member Fred Campos has shown a pattern of behavior detrimental to the effective service as a trustee. Therefore, now be it resolved that the board finds the school board member Campos violated the board member ethics statement and board policy BBF local by taking private actions that may compromise his performance as a board member and by not being continuously guided by what was best for all students in the district. Be it further resolved that the board does not condone the behavior of the board member Campos, and therefore the board does hereby publicly censure him. Be it further resolved that the board member Campos is prohibited from being a board officer, serving on any nominating committee, or using district funds to travel for the remainder of his term. Mr. Campos must also separate his school district social media posts from his business social media posts on all platforms. Adopted this day, 25th April 2022. That is the statement. I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the censure resolution as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that motion passes, one abstention. All right. All right, I will accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned. We got stuff to sign. Yeah, that's good.